This is going to be this is that code from that other video. I just needed to kind of explain it kind of briefly because it's really confusing to some people. This is the TSR 8 time frames, 5 minute through the monthly. So what this is saying right here is the 5 minute all the way back. Saying on this bar right here, the TSR 20 in this case is falling. You can see it's falling. It's saying it's also falling on all of these, on this exact bar right here. It's saying the weekly and the monthly are going up. Now, there's not much point in me going to the others. It's no different than what you saw before. The idea is if a lot of them are red, you might be wanting to look for sales. And here is the 200 SMA. Again, it is falling, so kind of one more indication that the market might be falling. Okay, now let's look at the code, and I'm just going to go over it briefly. It's most important that you have it, not so much that you understand it. In this case, my name here is 8 TSRs. Now I just did this right here for enivids site. The actual true indicator, which I stripped 99% of it out, is just called 8s. And it's called 8s because I have this same, what you just saw, I have this exact same thing where I can, where you see how this says TSR, the big one says TSR, and it'll say Alma, J Fatel, and it'll say stochastic, awesome oscillator, force index, WPR, on and on. Just maybe 50 of them here. And in this case, I'm going to leave that alone. By default, in this particular one, which is stripped down version for enivid site, it's by default both of these are true. Now that's not, it doesn't show true right now, but I'll explain that in a second. So when it's true, when the first is true and the TSR is true, it will plot these first four down here. That's the month, week, day, and 240. If you turn first to false, it's going to plot these next ones, the 60, 30, 15, and 5. And if in a larger one, or if you wanted to expand this, you might have awesome oscillator. Well, if you wanted to plot the awesome oscillator, you would just turn this to false and awesome oscillator to true, and it would plot that. Probably going to confuse the heck out of most people, but in here they both are by default true. And like I said, the important thing is that you have the NQ4. Don't use anything you don't have the NQ4. It's just the buffers, the colors. When you get down here, you can reuse buffers, you can reuse bools, you can reuse a lot of things. In other words, don't change the name, change the conditions that you're using it under, and you can plot like this is doing. And in this case, if first is true and TSR is true, it does all this. I'll show you where it stops. Stops right here. Stops right here. So if first is true and TSR is true, it looks at these time frames, 240, 1440, and all like that. Now, what if first was not true and TSR was true? In that instance, first is not true. The exclamation point means not. If first is not true and TSR is true, well, then it does this. This is where people get confused. I can still use bar 43 200 I can assign anything to that. In this case, I'm assigning bar shift 60 to that. And the reason is so I don't have to keep renaming things. And I can use this same little amount of code here. It's not very much right there. And I can put hundreds and hundreds of different indicators in it. And only change the name and whatever the buffer and whatever parameters have. Everything else stays the same. Probably confusing you, but that's just the way it is. But anyway, I'll post this on enivids site and see the draw horizontal lines. That's something that I probably should have taken out, but I'm not going to now. But that's all the code is, and like I said, it's really kind of confusing if you don't understand code, and it's somewhat confusing if you do understand code. But anyway, I'll post it on enivids site. That's enough confusion for tonight.